It's full of stars.
We're back here on Business Portal. This is your host for this segment on Trends Analysis, Tony Casino. And for our topic in this episode is the Middle East crisis and constitutional reform. And with us is our guest from Get Real Philippines, none other than Mr. Orion Dumdum. So, you're saying earlier that, because of the single person dictating upon the body politic or the state, that is not progressive, that is regressive.
It is regressive, yes.
Okay.
It's I would say that it is much more primitive also, you can even say that. It's much more primitive because it really concentrates power in one person who may not necessarily have all the inputs from the rest of the population.
Okay.
And that's the reason why a parliamentary system is actually a lot better, because formulation of policy requires that all inputs be taken from the entire legislature, from all the districts, from all the representatives of each of the districts and sectoral representations.
Okay, in the case of Libya, the son of Gaddafi was declaring they are not similar like Tunisia and Egypt because the processes are turned. In Libya, the only difference is they have oil.
Yes.
Right? And they said, with oil, we're able to generate a better income, we're able to bring in foreign investors, saying, but who owns the oil? Nobody. Because the oil is in the middle of the desert. And who owns the desert? Nobody. It's the state that owns the desert. In Benghazi, where they were having all these rallies, there is no oil there. So they were saying it was under the leadership of his father that was able to, nurture that industry and make it so mature that it attracted more foreign investors, particularly Europeans, into their country. But now with this crisis, it will divide the country. But here in this case, they were saying they are being run by a single person.
In truth, yes, that's really what's happening. I mean, it really is still run by
a single person,
or a single family, because.
But there's an apparent dissatisfaction among the constituents.
Yes, because you think about it, whereas they do have a lot of oil, Libya hasn't really changed that much in terms of a lot of its infrastructure.
Unlike, for example, let's say Singapore.
Or even another country which is a lot poorer, which is also Arab, the United Arab Emirates. When I say poorer, I mean Dubai. Dubai does not have oil,
Yes.
but it is a lot more progressive than Libya.
What was the system in Dubai?
Dubai was actually an emirate, so it's an enlightened despotism in many ways, because you have an emir. Basically, it's like a federal state within the UAE. And Dubai is just one of those. There's Abu Dhabi as well and others. So they had the prince or the emir who basically felt personally that he wanted his own place.
He has compassion
for his people. So he wanted to develop it.
Are they more of the rule or are they more of the exception?
In many ways, they are the exception. There are cases where there was a time when it was actually more of the rule that monarchs would somehow be beneficial because they are raised in a way. There's a particular training that's forced on them that turns them into people who think more about the welfare of
Okay.
their people. That's the way it was before.
Right. So if now we see it as they're more of the exception rather than the rule.
They're more of the exception than,
Right
than
now,
the rule.
in this case, is there any resolve when they go for a constitutional reform? I mean, we're back to this now. How can you reform? How can constitutional reform change a state, change a country? In the Philippines, we witnessed 25 years ago, EDSA revolution. We're celebrating it this year, the 25th silver anniversary. Have we changed that much?
We haven't really changed that much because, well, to begin with, the system that we used, the one based on the 1987 Constitution, is unfortunately not fit for our nature, for our culture. It's essentially an American system, and the American system was built on a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant model.
Okay.
You know, and then here we are actually Austronesian, Malayo-Polynesian, Hispanic, predominantly Catholic, coming from a different point of view from, say, the Americans, and therefore the system that was tailor-fit for the American mindset wouldn't really work with us here in the Philippines.
For the longest time, we've been under the European rule by the Spaniards, and then the Americans ruled us for about 60 years, and then 3 years for the Japanese, so we're kind of a bit confused.
Yes,
now you
yes.
have your slide that shows you, can we see that slide please? That would show the transformation from one driven by this reform that will be more cultural.
Yes, yes.
Can you explain this?
So I want to explain it like this. Basically, systems eventually determine your destiny.
Okay.
Because there are many people who've been saying this. Lawrence Harrison, Sam Huntington, and so many other people who talk about culture determining destiny. I'm saying that systems determine culture as well.
Okay.
And because they determine culture, culture determines destiny. If you have a good culture or a hardworking culture or a disciplined culture, you're likely to succeed.
Okay. In this diagram you're showing here a continuum.
Yes.
Showing from systems to behaviors, from behaviors to habits and customs, and from habits and customs to character
and culture.
And culture. How would that go to that continuum?
So this is how it works. So I split it in half. I had a different slide last time, but I decided to split it in half to reflect the fact that there is a difference between the personal individual system, you know, as a person, just one person, and the collective system, as in the country or the community.
Right.
So if you have a system, normally it starts off with the collective system, because when you set up a collective system, the individuals are more likely to follow and match up with what the whole community says. If you come up with a system that rewards good behavior and punishes bad behavior, then you're going to likely behave in a good way and avoid, you know, doing things in a bad way.
So that's driven by policies.
That's because of policies.
Policies created by a more consultative body, a collegial body, in the case of a parliament.
Yes.
Okay. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, how does that system? What is explained to this?
Okay. What this actually explains is that all these different systems, politics, culture, religion, they are all systems.
All right.
So some people have kept on saying, they like saying, well, we don't need to do a system change, we only need to do a culture change. Well, I'm saying, to begin with, culture is a system.
Okay.
So if you want to change the culture, you need to change the underlying system that causes the culture to be the way it is. And that's what that previous slide was all about. We're talking about...
previous slide,
Can we go back to this previous slide? So it shows here that the system induces behavior. Okay? And so you end up behaving in a particular way based on the system. Like in Singapore, for example, the people used to keep on spitting. But they set up all these fines that made it very expensive when you're caught spitting and littering and all that. That people avoided that and they became clean.
Okay.
And because of that behavior, the system continued to, reinforce that. It became a habit.
Yeah.
Among a group of people, it's not just a habit, it's a custom.
All right.
And for an individual person, when a habit gets more embedded, it becomes part of your character.
Yeah.
And for a collective group of people, it becomes part of
We're
culture.
down to our last 10 seconds. Your last
Okay.
words, please. All right.
Last words, well, we really need to have constitutional reform. I mean, we've got a system that's not really working. We need to have one that's working. We need to have one that's more molded to our culture, one that will bring the best in the Filipino. We need to study all these different models from other countries, not just the USA.
Very well said. And that's it for this edition on Trends and Analysis. This has been your host, Tori Casino. Do stay tuned for the next program. It's been good having you on this show.
All right.
Thanks, man.
It's full of stars.